This episode is brought to you by AudioQuest, makers of the mythical series Analog Interconnects. Click the link in the show notes for more information.
Today we're going to be talking about the glory of CD ownership. And I'm not just going to be theorizing or hypothesizing here. I live this stuff. You can see behind me, I've got a bunch of vinyl. Not vinyls, vinyl, right? What you can't see is over here in this corner, I have 3 IKEA Gnedby towers full of CDs. I've got 2 there and 2 there. That's a lot of CDs. Now, why am I revisiting this topic this week? 2 reasons. The first reason is the CD, the commercially available CD, turned 40 last week. The second reason is I am reviewing a CD player this week. But if you're thinking, who the hell listens to CDs anymore? I've got news for you. I surveyed this channel's sort of subscriber base and I asked them, do you still listen to CDs? 48% said yes, 52% said no. Bit like a Brexit vote, as one of my friends emailed me to point out. But 48%, that's almost half of you, are still listening to CDs. I think that's significant. I did the same poll over on my Patreon and I think it was almost 60% said yes to still listening to CDs. But if you're still thinking, who the hell listens to CDs anymore? Know that in Germany, the CD is very much still the #1 physical format. But if we look to worldwide figures or look to the USA, we know that people are buying still more CDs than they are buying vinyl records. It's still the #1 physical format around the world. And in 2021, in the USA, CD sales finally turned upwards again after 20 years of decline. Now that might be because of the pandemic, but it might be that people just are not ready to let go of CDs just yet. I'm certainly not. That's why I built this collection over the last 3 or 4 years. But also, last year, in the middle of the pandemic, as it was back then when we were under lockdown, I made a video called 10 Reasons Why I Still Listen to CDs, or 10 Reasons Why I Still Buy CDs. But playing that video back yesterday, I kind of looked at it and went, this is a bit weak. This is not how I would present it nowadays. But, and this may confound some viewers, is that I have another wall that's full of CDs. So what's up with that? So in this video, I'm actually going to redo those 10 reasons. I'm going to represent 10 reasons why I still buy CDs. So you could think of this video as a remastered CD. However, there's more. I'm also going to add 5 more reasons why I still buy CDs. So think of it as like an expanded remaster. So reason #1 is that with a CD, I still get my physical format kick. So I still get hands-on with handling a format that allows me to play music, right? So I'm holding the music in my hands. Reason #2 is related to that, is that we get a booklet. The booklet has, I guess, what we would basically call cover art. And it has, in many cases, extensive liner notes. And those liner notes and many of the photos in the booklets and the information and the credits are not found on streaming services. That metadata layer really just kind of has the cover of the information. Maybe you'll get an all music review or an album review from somewhere else. But you won't get necessarily what's in the booklet. Right now, the vinyl people will be going, well, yeah, John, we still get that from vinyl and it's much bigger. And you're right, it is much bigger. However, #3, when you buy a CD, especially when you buy it over the internet and it arrives at your door using traditional mail services, right? A CD is less likely to get damaged in transit, far less likely. I mean, I buy records and I get bumped corners, split seams. Sometimes the record gets scratched, moving inside the packaging repeatedly in transit. That almost never happens with a CD. The worst that happens generally if somebody doesn't pack it properly is the little sort of spindle in the middle that keeps the CD in place. Sometimes the little pins on that break. But that's replaceable. Not as easy as it used to be, but it's still replaceable. You can't replace a vinyl's external sleeve. If it's split for good. Reason number 4 is that CDs are much, much cheaper than their vinyl counterpart. So if I go up to my local CD and vinyl store, there's a big bookstore up the road from here called Dussmann, and it has a vinyl section and a CD section. And generally the CDs are anything from maybe €8 up to about 20 if it's a sort of deluxe edition. But the vinyl sort of starts at 25 and goes all the way up to 40 and 50 if it's a deluxe edition. So I'm saving money when I'm buying new CDs compared to new records. And it's the same on the second-hand market. I buy a lot of CDs used on Amazon and Discogs. Now, used CDs are crazy cheap. I know a lot of people like to talk about thrift stores and I guess charity shops and things like that. They're not really a big thing here in Berlin, so I'm not really exposed to that. But definitely out there on the internet, on Discogs, CDs, yes, of course, mainstream CDs from 30 years ago are like €1 or €2. Most of them are considerably cheaper than, I don't know, the record that you would otherwise buy, especially stuff released in the 90s. There is one exception, actually, is that some of the more obscure electronic music that I was listening to in the early noughties, if I try and track some of that down on CD, I can be paying up to $30 per CD, sometimes 40. That Monolake CD that I featured in our last video about the Dynaudio speakers, that cost me something like €40 because it's out of print. But that is generally very unusual. If you think about vinyl, a whole bunch of stuff from the 90s remains out of print, inaccessible, or inaccessible to somebody with a sort of normal income. I mean, I'm not going to spend €200 on a record. I've thought about it, but I'm not going to do it. And if I look at the CD and it's like €20, no contest. A great example, actually, is the latest Orbital release, which is, I think it's a 7 vinyl set, and you get the same tracks on the 2 CDs. The 7 vinyl set is $100. The 2 CDs, $20. I bought the CDs. Thank you very much. Number 5, CDs are much, much easier to store. Like I've got them, stacked up here, here, and here. Whereas my record collection is behind me, but I've also got some Callahans in my kitchen now with records in them because I just don't have any more room in my lounge. This will be especially important if I come to move house, because boxing up the CDs and carrying those out into a truck is going to be much, much easier than boxing up my records and carrying them out to the same truck, because CDs are smaller and they're lighter. They're just easier to keep in your life. I think one of the reasons that people are buying CDs still, or maybe there's been an upturn in buying CDs, is because people, they like stuff. Like nowadays, it's very easy to have all of your music on a hard drive, all of your photos on a hard drive, your books on a Kindle, and then your house is empty, right? It's just got furniture in it. And there's no sort of signifiers of who you are. Your identity, well, at least for me, is built upon my love for music. Anybody coming in here can definitely see I'm into music. And I only really watch the other YouTubers who are into music. Number 1, Steve Guttenberg, because he talks about music. He holds up records. He holds up CDs. I have a connection there with that. Reason number 6 is actually one of the reasons that I think the CD really took off in the early 80s. And that is the absence of surface noise. Because if you want to get people sort of behind a new format, you have to capture the classical crowd. And the CD really did that, because I think classical listeners who were listening to records on vinyl, during those quiet passages, if they're clicks and pops and worse, rotational clicks, there's nothing worse than a rotational click. The CD allowed classical listeners to kind of dispense with that frustration overnight. So Deutsche Grammophon, I think, released a lot of their stuff on CD in the 80s and just sold loads of it. So I think that really got people on board, like no surface noise. I think it's a real killer advantage of the CD. Reason number 7, this kind of relates to a comparison with streaming services. Because whenever I play something on Spotify, Tidal, Gobuzz, even stuff through Rune, like the streaming services know that I've played that. And that's useful to them to sort of build up a picture of who I am as a listener so that they can feed me appropriate playlists. But it also means that everything I listen to is being tracked. One thing I love about CD listening is it's completely private. I put a CD in the CD player over here, close the drawer, press play. Nobody knows that I'm listening to it except maybe my neighbor. So it's a private format, just like vinyl. Streaming tracks us, CDs don't. Reason number 8 has become a bit of a hot button issue around here these days, in that I don't know of, actually no I do, one of my readers emailed me about it, but generally speaking 99.99% of CD players play back the CD contents gaplessly. It's super important. If a track is designed to blend seamlessly into the next track, you don't want your playback hardware inserting a small gap of silence between that, because it has to sort of finish playing the first track before it can buffer the second track. CD players, on a CD actually, it's one continuous track. It's not 12 tracks or 8 tracks. Those are sort of artificially generated by the table of contents that's stored at the start of the CD. So when the track advances on a CD player, it's just sort of a virtual track advance. But what the laser is actually tracking is just one continuous track. So we get gapless playback guaranteed every time. The 9th reason why I still buy CDs, this is especially true when I'm buying stuff from Bandcamp, is that the artist gets more money from me when I buy a CD. Even when I buy it from Amazon, they still get more money, or from my local bookstore, Dussmann, the artist still gets more money. And I like that idea. I like to feel that I'm supporting the artist a little bit more, because as we know, when we stream an album, the artist is getting paid a tiny, 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 tiny slice of money. And that's not true with a CD. I don't know the exact amount, but I do know that when you buy a CD, the artist gets more of a cut of that purchase. Number 10, the 10th reason why I still buy CDs. And this has been borne out again by the CD player that I've reviewed this week, is that CD players sound just a little bit better than streaming in the equivalent price brackets, right? So if you've got, say, €1,000 to spend on a streamer, or €1,000 to spend on a CD player, the CD player, generally speaking, will net you a better sound. And that's true at €2,000, €3,000. The difference isn't huge, but for nerdy hi-fi people like me, it's really important. Now we come to the bonus tracks. So reason number 11 is that my CDs are always here. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if Neil Young wakes up in a bad mood and decides for whatever reason he doesn't like that streaming service over there and decides to pull his catalogue from that streaming service, if I was only using that streaming service, I couldn't play Neil Young anymore. Got my CDs here, I can always play Neil Young. And Neil Young is not the only person to have pulled, even temporarily, his catalogue or part of his catalogue from streaming services. It seems to happen quite often. I think it happened to Radiohead for a while. It happens because of contractual disputes, or I don't know, just general reasons that we're probably not aware of. So CDs are always available to me here, and they never disappear. Like Neil Young's not running into my house, pulling all of his CDs out of my rack and then running away again. That would be madness, right? So I love the sort of the certainty of the CD. Reason number 12 relates to remasters. So when an artist remasters an album and then releases it, and it comes out on CD but also streaming services, what some streaming services do is they just delete or remove the original master. So you're only left with the remaster available to you on streaming services. Now that's a problem, because I would say the majority of remasters done, certainly since '95, not all of them, but a whole chunk of them, don't sound as good as the original master. Mainly they're just dynamically compressed too much. So yeah, they really pop on the radio, they pop through your hi-fi, but they're exhausting to listen to. And that bugs me. Now, I'm not saying that the original master is in every respect better than the remaster. doesn't have the punch, and maybe it's a bit sort of weak on dynamics, and sometimes it's a bit thin. But I'd rather have the dynamic range of the original than the more limited dynamic range of the remaster. And if that original is no longer on streaming services, then I need to find the original CD. So a lot of the CDs I have here are generally, when I bought them, I had the choice of the remaster or the original. And unless there were bonus tracks, I bought the original. If there were bonus tracks, I'd buy both. So I'd have the original to play and then the newer expanded remaster with the bonus tracks. I know that's super nerdy, but because CDs are so cheap, it's not too much of an ask to do it. In fact, in most cases, I can buy the original CD and the remaster and still come out ahead of buying a vinyl copy. Number 13, CDs can often be a great source of more obscure content. There are some artists who release music, and some of it goes onto streaming services, but not all of it. And I'll give you an example. So Cherry Red, the label, just reissued the entirety of the House of Love's output or major label output on an 8 CD box set. Now that includes 3 main albums, then 5 CDs of B-sides and live cuts. The 3 main albums are already on streaming services and always have been. The box set itself is not a remaster, but the 5 bonus CDs of B-sides and outtakes and live cuts, they're not on streaming services. Similarly, Cherry Red also reissued an album by Children of the Bong a couple of months ago. Again, that was a 90s electronica album. And the version that's on streaming services has 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 bonus cuts. But the CD is a 3 CD affair. It has what, maybe 10 or 12 bonus tracks. So sometimes you get bonus stuff on the CD that just isn't on streaming services. I think more labels should do this actually, is especially if they're releasing expanded remasters, put most of it on CDs, but put a limited version on streaming services. Number 14, CDs or CD playback does not require an internet connection. This is an obvious one really, but if my internet goes down, I can still play music. I can still play digital music. So I can pull anything from the shelves around me here, put it in the CD player, and I'm good to go. Don't need to rely on the internet to stream from a streaming service. And then lastly, number 15, and this is really to do with listener commitment. We've all got that friend where you give them like the streaming app and say, play some music. And they'll play something and they'll go, no, actually I want to play this. And then another friend will go, oh, no, I want to play that. And you end up listening to chunks of songs because everybody's so impatient to get to the next thing and doesn't let the currently playing song run its course, right? And then we do it at home, don't we? Sometimes we sit there with the iPad and we're streaming stuff and like, oh no, next thing. I'm not that kind of listener with streaming, but I think a CD is really good for that kind of listener because it forces us to commit to an album or an EP for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes. We put it in, we press play. That's all we're listening to for the next little while. And there isn't a skip button that could take us to another artist or album in a moment, as it is with streaming. So I like the commitment that the CD forces us into when we're listening to music. So there we are, 15 reasons why I still buy and listen to CDs. But wait, I've got one more, and this relates to the environmental impact of various music playback formats. And this was raised again by Robert Henke. He is the man behind Ableton Live and Monolake. This is the reason why I held the Monolake CD up in the Dyn Audio review, because I knew I'd be making this video, right? And he was basically saying, I'll read it to you. I'll read it to what he said on Facebook, because this made news around the world in some of the bigger sort of hi-fi and music publications, because Robert Henke is obviously a very well-respected figure in the music world. And he said, I still love physical products, but manufacturing big heavy plates of plastic and having them shipped around the globe is a huge waste of energy and resources. He's talking about vinyl. In times of global warming and dependency on cheap energy from the likes of Russia or Saudi Arabia, I consider not doing any releases on vinyl anymore, but fully embracing CDs. The last big physical media innovation, he's talking about the CD, with a better signal to noise ratio, better channel separation, better frequency response than vinyl in a smaller package.
Oh, really?
And he says, compact disc, you are underrated and you will always have a place in my heart. I'll put a link to Robert Henke's full statement in the description box below so you can read it for yourself. But I thought that was also very interesting. And if you think streaming is the most environmentally friendly music format, then boy, do I have a link for you, also in the description box below. One final thought. As people who presumably care about sound quality, if that's you, you're watching this channel, you presumably care about sound quality as I do, I think we owe an enormous amount of gratitude to the CD. Let me explain why. Obviously in the 70s, the #1 music format was the vinyl record. But during the 80s, the popularity of the cassette tape really came up and up and up and up until about 87, 88, it became the most popular format on the planet. And were it not for the CD, it would have continued that reign and it would have continued to squeeze out records. So the CD in the 80s did not kill vinyl. It didn't. The CD actually supplanted the cassette tape with its inferior sound quality. I know cassette tapes are a nice little fetish item nowadays. I know people that love them, but let's not pretend for a moment that they sound as good as the CD. So the CD essentially saved us from the cassette tape's dominance. So yeah, this is my sort of remastered, expanded take on why I still buy CDs, why I still listen to CDs, why I still collect them, why I love them. If you love them too, please consider giving this video a like down below. If you like my attitude towards, hi-fi, high-end audio and music, right? I'm not one of those pretentious wankers who says, well, I'm not an audiophile, I'm a music lover. No, I am an audiophile, but I'm also a music lover, right? And I don't really discriminate between formats. I stream a lot. I buy a lot of vinyl. I buy a lot of CDs, right? I do everything. So if you dig that, then please consider subscribing to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.